yeah, it's free to go.
This evening, we have Kevin and Linda Grenzer.
Show.
I think some of the best stories are when ordinary people do something extraordinary in their lives. And that's what these two people are doing. Linda for post office, Kevin for Oneida County. Ordinary jobs, ordinary people. But they've been involved with Loon since the 1990s. And then when they retired, they've been rescuing loons for some time, but have dedicated their lives to this cause now. They have a lot of stories to share with you this evening. So without taking any more time, please welcome Linda.
You. My husband and myself have rescued loons since about 2013.
I don't.
When I let them. 2015 is when we also started to specialize in ice rescue. So today we're gonna tell you the stories of some of our loons that we have rescued and some of the dangers and some ways that you can help these loons so we don't have to go rescue them. Last year we went nonprofit because we normally go throughout the state of Wisconsin for loons. When we get a call for a loon, we'll go anywhere in Wisconsin. And besides loons, we do rescue other birds, but we put on an average 10,000 plus miles a year in the state of Wisconsin. When
Linda
we're going.
said you want to help rescue loons. I said, sure. She said maybe 3-4 times a year. Sometimes it's 3-4 times a week. So it's the need.
Not all.
Not all.
Okay, one of the things that we get a lot of calls on are a lot of people think loons have a broken leg. Loons do some quirky things with their legs. And every one of these loons are perfectly healthy loons, but we get numerous calls on loons saying they got a broken leg. See, a loon's legs are pushed way far back. They're excellent divers, but they cannot walk on land. And they do some quirky things with their legs, which a lot of people who do not realize that's what the problem is.
But when they're on land, they can scoot their wings and their feet enough that we have to run after them to catch them. Raven can attest to that.
Another thing is we have loons. I'm part of the Loon project. I help Walter Piper. He studies loons in Oneida County, parts of Lincoln and Vilas County. And a lot of these loons are banded, so we know who's who. Each loon has 4 bands on their legs with different color combinations. Well, when somebody sees these colors on these loons, they think right away it's a lure, or right away there's something going on that it's not, it's a bobber, especially when some of these loons are red and white on one side. So that's another thing that we do have to make sure the loon does not have to be rescued. Another thing is a lot of people mistaken certain birds that they think are loons. One is the common merganser, the male, and the other one is the double-crested cormorant. We get a lot of calls where people say it's a loon, and they'll say, well, the loon's up on the tree, and we know right now that that's not a loon. Okay, we asked for.
This is embarrassing.
We ask for pictures and videos before we drive 2-3 hours if we're gonna rescue a loon. A call came in, this guy was frantic, it was only 15 minutes from our house. We did not question, we just came out, he said the loon was in my driveway, hurry up, something's gonna get it. Well, when we pulled up, if you look, that's not a loon, that's a loon
But
birdhouse.
they were all standing down by the 4-wheeler down there. So we drove down and said, where's your loon? He said, you drove right by.
So that's the reason why we ask for phone calls or for
But if you
pictures.
notice, there's a PVR in it.
But that definitely was not a loon, that was a loon.
And he was dead serious. He
Birdhouse.
swore that was a loon.
So this is what we do. We ask for pictures, like this one, we could definitely knew that this one needed to be rescued. Actually, we did get that one. And this is part of, this was on them, but this also was hooked into him, this big hook. That one we had to catch at night. This one was a beach loon. When a loon is sick or injured, it normally will go up to land because it can't thermal regulate, it's cold. And when we get calls when the loon is beach, we realize that there's probably something going on with the loon if it's not nesting. And normally there's certain places they nest and they're not gonna nest on a boat launch or up on your grass or on any kind of sandy beach.
If you notice that hook and bobber, that was probably somebody soaking a minnow overnight, which in the state of Wisconsin, a lot of places is totally illegal. Because you're not attending the line, and the loon saw the minnow, probably grabbed it and ran.
We actually had one of our study loons that he was found dead on a neighboring lake. And there was a fishing pole attached to him besides the line and the bobber. This loon up on top, as you can see, there's a lot of line around its mouth. That loon we could not catch. That loon, we went numerous times, 5 times we tried. He flew.
Sunset Lake in this area.
He flew from lake to lake to lake. We even had one of the researchers that is a lot better at us trying to catch loons, and he couldn't catch it either. But that one, it just had it right here so he could eat and he was healthy. So that's why we always tell people, if you hook a loon, do not cut the line and let it go. Because we have a 1 in 10 chance of capturing a loon that's got line around it if it can evade capture by diving on us, even at night capture. When we do capture at night, we use high spotlights where we actually pull up to the loon with these bright lights and we try to blind them.
It's not as easy as you're making it
No,
out.
no, that's right. It's not that easy because we got a 1 in 10 chance of capturing that loon. But what we do is we try to quietly go with the light, shine it in its eye like a deer in a headlight to mesmerize it. And you know, we have to get 5-6 feet away from it, be able to scoop it up with the net. And sometimes they dive at 15 feet, 20 feet.
500 feet. Sometimes, as soon as that light goes on them, they die. They know what's going on and we just can't catch them. And then she doesn't sleep for days.
No, because I go back and try to catch them the next night. And this is kind of how we do it at night. You take that bright light and then you shine it on the loon. And then normally there's 3 people in a boat. 1 person drives, 1 nets, and the other one spotlights. So when they're putting the light on the loon, no one else, the loon is hopefully mesmerized by the light and we can pull up to it, but you normally need 3 people. And then you scoop the loon up when you get close enough with the net. And lots of times we're out there hours because they dive and we keep relocating them in the dark.
But we now have infrared night vision and thermal vision that we just purchased. So hopefully we'll be able to even go without lights and see what's going on. And then another thing, real quick, saw how dark it was. We usually always, except when I forget, we call the sheriff's department. Because we're out there with high-powered spotlights at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And you can't believe the words people tell us.
They don't know what we're doing out there. Okay, we're gonna start with spring. In spring, lots of times loons are migrating back to their territories. What happens is loons fly thousands of feet up in the atmosphere. And when there's a storm up there, they start getting iced over, just like planes do. They get de-iced. Well, loons don't. Loons are solid bodies. So any extra weight on them, they can't stay up there and they crash down. And when they crash down in all different places, like on roads, fields, and with the cow that we just rescued this spring.
She goes, honey, I'm gonna catch this loon this time. And I said, Linda, no, let me do it and you'll thank me later. As soon as she put the net over that loon, I was full of calm. But you know what? Sometimes you do that.
Because here's a video of the cow. They were all wondering what was in their field.
One bull in there too with those fighting.
But luckily we got to the loon and scooped it up. before the cows trampled
The
it.
problem with cow manure is very acidic, so the farmer let us wash it off in their milk house. And then Reggie had the job of cleaning the loon really well and continuously washing it and getting all the acidity off of it.
Oops.
Okay, they like.
Oh, you can watch it again.
No. Eyes were burned a little bit from the acid from the manure, but he was released again.
Another thing that happens when these loons crash down on the ground, people find them and instead of calling or putting them in a lake, they put them in small ponds. Or a loon will actually land and find a small pond and scoot to it. Well, when they're in a small pond with a lot of trees around it, a loon needs a 1/4 mile runway. Doesn't mean it needs a 1/4 mile of water, but it needs open space to gain that altitude to get over the trees. So if it's a pond that's surrounded by trees, there's no way that loon is gonna get out, so we have to rescue it. Now, these are normally very healthy loons, which in turn, they're diving, they want nothing to do with capture. Night capture is pretty tough to try to capture them, so we came up with a different thing by using a gill net. So we string a 200-foot long gill net, which is what, 12 feet deep,
12-foot stretch.
12-foot stretch. And we try to get that loon to go into the gill net so we can safely capture them. Now, this one we were able to capture with the first try. This one in Marshfield, it took us 2 times to catch it because 3 people weren't enough. We had to bring in 13 people with 2 gill nets. And this was in a very small pond, but this loon wanted nothing to do with being captured.
He was very mean. He didn't, I don't think he ever saw people, because all our loons were here already. We're pretty sure he was going to Canada where the lakes would just start to open up.
Every one of our loons that we rescue go to Raptor Education Group. Without Reggie, we would have nowhere to take them. We are just so indebted and grateful for all the wonderful work that they do for us. Because they will get these loons any time of the day or night once we bring them in. And a lot of them have a good success that they're rehabbed and released.
A lot of loons go to some other places. And people tend to, they want to do well, but they euthanize them because they don't know how to take care of them. Reggie knows how to take care of them. They will not euthanize a bird unless it's absolutely necessary.
Actually, this morning, this picture was taken. This is the Maiden Lake loon. She was hit by a boat Labor Day weekend. She's doing remarkably well, and I think she's going to be able to be released very shortly.
When we captured her, we thought it was lead poisoning. And we brought her to the clinic, and of course it was after hours. Marge Gibson met us. Marge put hands on the bird after she talked to her. Instantly knew the air sacs were ruptured in the bird. Very few people would even know that. I mean, she instantly, I'm just like, that's amazing. But that bird is going to be released.
And that one we did have to capture at night too. We had to do night capture on that one, which was kind of tough because it was Labor Day weekend and everybody was out on the lake. Every one of Reggie's birds get fed in the famous Reggie bathtub. What they'll do is they put minnows in there, but this one was one of those Canadian loons, we think, and he was a pretty vocal loon.
Loon from Curtis, Wisconsin, that was just admitted about 9 p.m. Really vocal and not happy to be here, but we'll soon be excited with big water. We'll finish doing x-rays and things tomorrow morning.
What they'll do is they'll exercise them in that bathtub 2-3 times a day, dry them off, and then they put them in a container with a sheet over it. So it's quiet and dark and they rest.
Okay, entanglements. A lot of the loons that we get calls on have fishing line on them. This loon was actually a near and dear loon to me personally because I knew this loon as a little brown chick. He was a territorial male on Oneida County, and he had line all wrapped around his tongue. And Kevin, when we were in Florida, now that we go to Florida, he learned how to cast net, which means they do that for fishing down in Florida. You can't do that in Wisconsin, but it's it works really good to catch a loon or a,
Well, we were down there, we caught 27 pelicans in one day that were hooked up in fishing line using cast nets. So we brought that technique to Wisconsin, and I can reach out 15, 20 feet now.
but the loon can't dive otherwise, it'll see it coming, but this loon was pretty slow already because he had the line around him and he couldn't eat. So Kevin cast netted him, and then we took him to shore. And here's how we were unraveling on getting him.
First thing we look for is line going down the throat. If that's the case, he's hanging out, and he has to go to the clinic immediately. Trying to free up his wings and hope I gotta be quiet.
Okay, you got his beat?
I got it.
Huh?
I got it.
Okay.
It's okay, baby.
So now we try to pull this off.
Wait, just wait.
Just wait, just wait. It's all around his neck
Oh
still.
It's
no,
been wrapped around his tongue.
oh no,
Oh, no.
oh no.
Okay, this loon, once we untangled it, we couldn't find a hook or a sinker, and we were worried it ingested it. So we made the hour-and-a-half drive to,
We drove to Reggie, we called ahead. We had the x-ray machine warmed up and Marge met us at the door. Gave it an x-ray, gave it the all clear. We couldn't find a lead or a hook or anything. And we brought it back to the lake because it had a mate and a chick.
no, it did not.
Okay, no, it did not. It had a mate.
It had a mate that was nesting, and he was nesting, and we knew we had to get him back to the lake as soon as possible. This is what was on him. This was what was wrapped around him. Once we took it to Reggie, weight was good, this was taken off, x-ray showed nothing. He was returned back to his lake with his mate. A week later, now this was a banded loon, so we knew who he was. A week later, we got a call. They found a deceased loon on the lake. And our hearts just went down. Until I found out what the bands were. It was the female. What happened was, we think the female's the one who ingested the lead sinker. And the hook was all entangled. He must have got wrapped into with her because they were nesting.
He was helping her try to get out.
The line broke and he made it and she did not. We did not know she ingested it. We saw her nesting when we grabbed him.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Don't use lead fishing tackle, please. One small split shot will kill a loon within 2 weeks, or an eagle, or anything like that. 3/4 of the loons we capture have lead in their systems. And that is the cheapest, easiest way we can save our loons, is stop using anything with lead in it. Okay, go on.
Okay, this summer we got a call. This is another loon I knew very well because he's one of our study loons. She sent the picture and of course he's banded, but he also had a red and white bobber. He had this much line on him.
He was trailing 50 to 75 feet of line behind.
He had a chick that was about 4 months old or 4 weeks old.
Again, somebody's soaking them in, most likely overnight.
For this much line. But the thing is, when we pulled up to him, this was a very tame loon, but when we pulled up to it, the line was dragging 50 feet. So Kevin grabbed the one end of the line, almost cut his hand, and the guy went with the boat and I was able to scoop him up. This one, we also untangled him, but there was nothing really bad that he needed to go into rehab, so he was released right away. And here's his release after we untangled him, because he had it mostly around his leg.
You're welcome.
The next day I was a little worried because when I released him, lots of times when we release the birds, they will actually stand up and do a wing flap, and he was having a hard time wing flapping.
Almost every bird swim out 50, 100 feet, turn around, do a wing flap. You might think I'm crazy, but it's to say thank you, and then they swim off. His wing flap wasn't quite the way we like to see it.
So I was kind of worried about him. So the next day I did go check him out.
He doesn't sleep at night. If there's anything wrong with Loon's,
And I came back and here he was with his 4-week-old chick and his mate. And he was starting to get a little bit better wing flapping. We think what happened was his legs were sore from all this line around his legs. And when they stand up to do a wing flap, they're using their legs. And he's been checked on quite a few times and he's back to his normal self of wing flapping.
but if he doesn't fly off in the winter, we'll bring.
Fall entanglements also are very dangerous to juvenile chicks. This time of year is when a lot of the parents leave their chicks by themselves because the adults will migrate first and the chicks are left on their lakes. So the chicks go for an easy meal. This one was on Anvil Lake in Eagle River. And if you see, look at all the line that was around its tongue, and its tongue was like hamburger when we got all the line off. She wasn't even sure if that he was gonna make it. But because Reggie does such wonderful work, he was released 10 days later on his lake, on his natal lake. And that one also we had even though he had all that line on him, he dove during the day and we had to capture him at night. Here's another fall entanglement. This one was on Squaw Lake. This one I was able to get during the day and net it, but this was down his throat. Marge had pulled all that out of him and he was very thin because he didn't eat for days. So this one needed a little more rehab. And after 3 weeks, Kevin and me were able to go take and release him to a bigger lake, not his natal lake. Normally we like to put him on their natal lake, but then we are worried about him not having enough time to exercise his flight muscles to be able to fly and migrate. So he was putting on a big body of water to continue his migration when he was able to. Here's another juvenile. This one we also captured at night. This one was in middle of Clare Lake in Barnes. This one had a lure on it and line all around its legs. As you can see, we caught it at night. We untangled it. Lots of times when it's after hours, Marge Gibson will actually take their phone call and we'll actually do a FaceTime and she can actually see what's going on, whether we need to bring this chick in or Loon in or not. This one was released and it did migrate because the residents were watching it.
People take ownership to loons. They're not my loons, your loons, they're my loons. We go there, what are you doing to my loon? I'm like, wait, we're trying to help you. And so, yeah, people, they really take ownership.
This was on this chick. The thing is, when we got the call, we were in New Mexico by our son. So we had to wait a couple days before we got there. Once we got home, the next day we went and got this loon. He was thin, so he was taken to Raptor Education Group, and in 7 days he was released back on his lake.
They feed these loons in the bathtub, like you see, 20, 25, 30 minnows at a time. So they got easy pickings and it really brings their body weights back up fast.
Lead poisoning. A single tiny lead sinker will kill a healthy loon in 2 to 3 weeks. This was a banded healthy male on Catherine Lake in Minocqua. he was found, actually, he was migrating already, and he was found on Ellis Island in Lake Michigan, where a lot of loons go this time of year. He was skin and bones. He was hardly moving when he was brought in. And the x-ray revealed that lead sinker.
Well, I actually went up to him on a stand-up paddleboard and just grabbed him. That's how easy he was to catch.
If anything you can do is get the word out to go lead free. There are so many alternatives out there because these loons are dying in record numbers where they would not if they didn't ingest this lead sinker.
And our
There's-
government officials, I beat my head against the wall talking to them, and nobody wants to touch the subject in Wisconsin. But where they've done this on the East Coast, the loon population has rebounded and the lead poisoning has gone down, so.
So we're asking everybody to spread the word, go through your tackle box, get rid of those lead sinkers and jigs. Cause see what happens is that loon, if you're fishing like for like panfish and the fish swallows the hook in the lead sinker and you cut the line and you let the fish, tiny fish go. Well, that thing's a little slower because it just got caught or it's got a hook in it. Well, here comes the loon. Ooh, easy food. Well, a loon will swallow that fish whole. So that whole fish goes down and that sinker goes down with it. Another way they get it is if somebody is fishing and they grab the line and they swallow the hook, sinker, and the spoon or whatever else that you're using.
And now I'm gonna make you all gasp. We have a third form of lead poisoning where they get shot. People will intentionally shoot loons in the water and in the sky. And it does happen more than I care to admit.
Just the pinpoint what lead does. What they'll do is what do you call it? When we first take them in, they take blood, and when the lead analyzer is high, they know they're high lead is in their bloodstream already. The x-ray reveals the lead is also in there, and they will start chelation treatment trying to get the lead out of the bloodstream, but lots of times the lead's already done its damage. It's already starting to tear down their internal organs and do a neurological. And that's just in 2 weeks.
You
This
notice
was a
we're all
healthy
wearing
loon.
glasses. Because this beak is a weapon that you cannot believe.
Okay, this next slide. These are loons that we have rescued. Every one of these are dead due to loon, to lead. And these are just a few of them, all over the state. Every one of these was brought in. That's why go lead free. That's what's gonna save majority of our loons. There's entanglements and everything, but lead's the #1 cause of deaths in loons. Okay, this loon.
Oh, yeah.
This loon was hooked. I don't have much of it left, but
You know what a dam is and the spillway underneath it, how big they are? They're not very big, right? Try to catch a loon in there.
what happened was this loon was hooked in both legs with line in between it. It got too close to the dam and it went over the dam. It was found in the spillway. The spillway was a very small 200 by 200 foot spillway.
Like
But
30 feet deep.
and we tried first the gill net, but that didn't work because
All the logs and the snags under the water.
and it was also 30 feet deep, which in turn, the loon could also go under the gill net because it only went down 12 feet. So we had to try night capture.
This is where my motto was I'd rather be lucky than good. She'll explain why.
So what happened was we couldn't find the loon in the dark in this 200 by 200 foot section. What the loon does, if it doesn't want you to see it, it comes up, gets a breath of air, lays flat and goes right back down, sinks like a submarine. And that's what this loon was doing. It took us a couple hours and
One morning.
they were ready to, him and the guy in the boat says, that's it, we're done. No, 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Finally, the loon stayed up on top of the water. And I had the ability that I was close enough to make the swing. And I go, I got him. And I'm pulling him in and Kevin goes, no, you don't have him. I hooked this. I didn't get the loon. I
Loon's
thought
on
I had the
outside of
loon.
net.
He was on the outside of the net.
That's
So-
why I'd rather be lucky than good.
But after 8 days, he was released back on the Townsend flowage after rehabbing by Raptor Education Group.
You see a common theme here with Raptor Education. We can't do it without.
Jet skis and boat strikes, that happens a lot. A lot of loons are getting hit, and these are just a handful. Actually, the Arrowhead one on the right, he had 2 chicks, and we actually kept him in the water with his broken wing because he was still feeding his chick. And what happens is if you take one of the parents, another loon will come in and try to take over that lake, and he'll kill the chicks. So he was with the chicks, he was diving, he was feeding the chicks, and even though he had that broken wing,
He would hide the chicks with them on shore.
the chicks fledged. The next day he passed away. He did his thing. He knew there was nothing we could do for him. His bones were broken at the humerus.
If we took them off the lake, the chicks would have died.
Fireworks. Nobody realizes that, but fireworks also do a lot to our loons. You know, everybody blowing them off on the lakes during the 4th of July. Well, this chick actually had the hot embers fall on its back, burnt, and what he was doing was trying to flick the embers off and then burnt his eyes in the meantime. Another firework incident, I think it was this summer, one was flying over the lakes and people are letting off the fireworks and they don't even let them off during the night or during the day there, and the percussion made it fall to the ground. And he was like 15 miles from any water. So we knew that he was flying over, and most likely they found embers on with feathers. So probably that's what happened to him. So like I said, fireworks are not the best for our wildlife. They also scare chicks, and families get broken apart by fireworks, where we had 2 calls this year about 4th of July where the chicks were not with the parents. And luckily both chicks were found back, were rescued, put back with the parents, and the family made it. Loon shot, which is hard to believe, but people do shoot loons. The one on the right, that one was shot probably during opening duck season. The guy must have, or not guy, the person who was hunting must have thought it was a duck and shot it, because it was right after that weekend. The one on the left was a chick, a very healthy chick that was banded. It was one of our study birds. He was actually hatched on Lake Thompson, but he was found shot on Boone Lake, which chicks normally do. When they first learn to fly, they go to neighboring lakes, and unfortunately, both of them had to be euthanized because their bones were broken. There's nothing you could do. Ice rescue.
That's me. The only time she ever let me go out on the ice,
When
because she wasn't there.
you're right. I was still working. When loons cannot leave due to various reasons, they're hooked, they're sick, they're injured, they can't take off, they end up being on a lake that starts freezing in around them. And the only way they are rescued is somebody gives us a call, and we have gone out there. Kevin has built so many different awesome boats and safety features, so I can go out on this thin ice, which is this
You
thin.
go out on a 1/4 inch of ice, 1,000 feet out, and never fall.
Though when we do get the calls, the first call we have to worry about is if you look in the top right picture, there's an eagle. What happens is as soon as that loon starts getting iced in, it's scared and it calls out. It starts calling out, and guess who comes over? We actually had one that this loon was surrounded by 7 bald eagles on the ice.
No water. The balloon was on just.
It was actually frozen on the ice. And when we first got the call, and this was right by our home, so it wasn't too far, we weren't so sure. We thought the guy was kind of making it up. Come on. And sure enough, when we got there, there was 5 eagles. Kevin went back to get our rescue equipment,
No, I went back to get the hovercraft.
the hovercraft.
We had a hovercraft.
And at that time, I asked a neighbor if I could use their pots and pans, because if you make noise, sometimes that will scare the eagles, which it did do.
Wait. The pots and pans, you know the Revere ware with the nice copper bottoms and stuff, the expensive stuff? That's what the lady gave me.
That's what it looked like.
That pipe pan was smashed down.
But she didn't want us to replace it. She says now she's got a lot of story behind her pots and pans.
But we literally flew out with the hovercraft, scared the last eagle. Linda just reached out, grabbed that loon off the ice and flew back.
Yeah, went to Reggie. The 7 Mile, last year we went on this lake. This one was in 3 lakes. We tried twice because the first time the loon was like 900 feet out. And normally we need a 10 by 10 foot hole to catch a loon. To be honest with you, when they're in this tiny little hole, it can take me a couple hours to catch it because they want nothing to do with me.
Wait. I've fired her twice on the ice. She'll be out there for 4 or 5 hours, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night. Her hands are turning purple. 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Well, if you notice, she's on a boat. She's harnessed with a full body harness.
See, that's me
float suit.
way over there. Oh, that one was
She's-
900 feet
She's
out.
harnessed to the boat is roped to shore. So when I decide she's done, she comes in whether she likes it. or not. She was screaming all the way in, but we went back the next day and caught.
Well, there was too much open water yet and had places
doesn't
to
give up.
evade, so I don't give up. But once I get up to them, there they are. And that actually hole was a little bit bigger than I wanted it to be because we couldn't tell because it was 900 feet out. Kevin came up with a new thing. He went and got pool covers, you know, those floating pool covers that you put the thermal to keep. Well, I take those out there now too, in these holes that are too big. And I actually will roll the pool cover out to make the ice look like,
Make the water look like ice.
and then the loon thinks that, oh, that's ice, so now I'm stuck in this little hole, but really it's the floating pool cover. And that's how I've been able to get it, except for the first time. I got the loon, but when he was pulling me in, I rolled.
Wait, it was a snowstorm.
It was a
Wasn't
snowstorm.
supposed to snow, 8 inches of fresh snow. She's stuck, she drove over the pool cover with that little black boat. We had to get an old 1964 Jeep to pull her off 20 feet at a time, backing up.
So from now on, I make sure the pool cover's out of the way before he pulls me in. This was another one. This was last year. It was in Iron River, which is about 2.5 hours from us. The ice was so unpredictable with the current in this lake. It was changing within minutes. It went from rotted ice to, it would be big and then it would be small. And by the time we would drive out there, it was big again. So we finally went out there and says, well, we're gonna have to get this loon somehow. So what we did was
I
with,
broke my own cardinal rule and went off the boat with her, because I'm usually the one that stays on shore, so no matter what happens to her, he comes in one way or another. But we had qualified people on shore that helped us.
and what we did was we used the gill net and we surrounded the loon with the gill net and we were able to capture this loon that way.
Now they're using a gill neck technique all over the United States catching.
Actually, out east, a lot of loons, they have big lakes, and what happens is the Nordic skiers are finding these loons that are 5, 6, 7 of them in a tiny little hole, and they'll use the gill net now
What
to grab
happens
it.
is loons molt their feathers in January, and they get caught, they can't fly out, so they're stuck in these holes, and people are finding them.
Because loons are flightless in January, February. That's when they normally molt their primary feathers. And then once they get their primary feathers, they're about ready to come back up by us.
Where do they winter?
They winter in most of them are in the Gulf of Mexico, some are the Atlantic, some of them stay in the bigger reservoirs down south. But that's mainly
The
where
reason
they
we
do it.
know this is because they did scientific studies where they implanted transmitters in the back of the loons with antennas, and they could track them flying around. And then some even had transponders put on their legs. And then they would catch the loons when they come back if they were lucky, and they could track all the data.
That's how they could tell the loons can dive 200 feet down, which nobody knew they could dive that down. I mean, our lakes aren't that deep, but when they're on Lake Michigan or in the Gulf, they go 200 feet down to get. Now I'm going to show you this video. Now, this is a very tiny hole. This was like maybe a 3 by 3 foot hole. And that's how long, but watch this. Where the loon, this is what they do when I get to them, to the open water. Catch a loon.
It's always on the other side of where it is.
Yeah. And they'll shoot under the ice and they'll come back. And that's what they'll do. Now, that's a small hole.
Another technique we developed is we drop underwater fishing nets at night underwater. There's a little swimmer in the boat thinking they can't see you. So now we illuminate all that, and it makes it a lot easier too. But if you notice, the boat has runners on it, so she can slide across and the handles, and she pushes that boat across the ice. And if it starts to crack, she can just fall right into the boat.
Got it.
So now what Linda will do is she'll grab the loon in the net and sit down, and then we bring her in.
I get the easy part, then it's tough going out there some days.
We got a grant this year for a gas powered winch that we can hook to a tree. So no matter what, she's coming in, no more Jeeps.
So did you see how fast he jumped?
And
Oh,
this is all
wait.
stuff, nobody taught us, nobody was doing this, we make it up as we go. But we're in groups now that we teach other people all around America, North America, and do all this.
Okay, we're
Lester.
gonna leave you with a story of a very, very special loon.
Very lucky.
Very lucky loon. He's the lake residents on Seven Island Lake named him Lester. Or the person who had first called us said his name was Lester. So that name stuck. Lester was a banded bird, so we knew who he was. Lester was wrapped up in fishing line so bad that we got the call on September 1st. She sent us picture 45 minutes by the time we got to her house from the call, we couldn't find Lester. It took us 2 hours on this lake, this tiny lake, which is only 132.
Next to that pier against the shore.
He was hiding in this pier and we passed him numerous times and we couldn't find him. And what we'll do is when a loon is injured or compromised, they hide along the shoreline. They'll hide under piers, under boat lifts, crawl up on shore in the twigs. And what we'll do is we'll go clockwise and then we'll go counterclockwise, because sometimes a certain angle you can't see them, but the other angle you can. But this one we passed numerous times.
And
But-
we use spotlights during the day, believe it or not, just to get enough reflection to see if that was a loon on
But what happened was when we saw him, this house is right next to the boat launch. So I went and jumped on the boat in the boat launch with the net, and Kevin also had the cast net in case he dove, but he was so compromised, he was pretty easy capture. So I don't have the capture, but here's where pulling him out of the net.
You notice we grabbed that beak right away. That's just such a weapon. It's unbelievable. And we always wear glasses.
Because they have some long necks and they can stretch, and that,
And if you notice, you just saw me take off. Somebody donated us motorcycle intercom systems, so we can talk to each other during the boats or in the dark. So she tells me how to drive the boat at night. She's a backseat driver. Basically, it makes a huge difference because now she's not yelling, and she's whispering and.
because you don't want the loons to hear you when you're
Right.
coming up, you want to be stealth, or you try to be. Okay, Lester was taken to Raptor Education Group, there's
Raven
Raven.
But you notice that bird is not sedated, restrained in any which way. They talk to it, they calm it down, and they'll put it on the scale and on the X-ray machine. And 9 out of 10 times, they'll sit there and let them do what they gotta do, which is phenomenal.
Besides Lester having fishing line on him, all around him, which you will see next, he also ingested a lead sinker and hook
Good jig.
jig. He had so much line on him that it was around his wings, around his bill, around his tongue, and actually the line went down his throat.
And that's when we all panic. See that.
And here Marge is working on him to get the line off.
Okay, it's looser now, darling, it's looser. It's looser, it's getting looser, that's a good thing.
Listen
It
to her
doesn't
talk.
hurt you so much, huh? It doesn't hurt you so much, no. I'm so sorry this happened to you. But you know what, you're so lucky. Right there a second, right there.
That's my hand.
No, it broke down there. I mean, I pulled it as far as I could, but it broke down there. It broke down further. So he's got it in his proventriculus already. We'll have to do surgery on him. It's okay.
The line broke, which in turn, the sinker and the hook was down there. Now, Dr. Sarah, the Antigo Veterinarian Clinic is just an amazing woman that the next day they perform surgery. And what they do is, it's like lavage surgery where they tip the loon upside down and they try to flush out the lead sinker
All
and
the
hook.
stones and everything in its skull and everything comes out.
Okay, it's looser now, darling. It's looser.
Where's Dr. Sarah?
And there's Dr. Sarah, some of the Reggie, and as
Most
you
vets
see,
won't work on wild animals and birds, so she's just amazing.
and if you see in her hand, there's the lead jig and hook. She successfully got it out. Now, Lester did have some lead poisoning because he ingested the lead, but because Lester was caught right away, he didn't have as much, he had lead in his system, but not as high as some of these that are so lethargic when we get them after a week or two. This was only a couple days he had the lead ingested, and he already had symptoms of lead poisoning. So he spent many days, for a week, they gave him the chelation treatment and gave him lots of fish in his tummy. And in a week later, he was able to be released back to his lake with his mate and a chick. He had a chick. The chick was a juvenile chick, so it was an older chick, but he did have a chick on the lake when he was released.
And I don't know if any of you fish, but you know how expensive minnows are. And these loons eat 15, 20 minnows at a setting. So this costs Reggie a lot of money and for the chelation medicine, but they never say no. They say bring it. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, Marge. Well, we call Marge mother. And the reason we call her mother is because we'll be out on an ice rescue and she's constantly calling, are you safe? Are you okay? We get back off the ice and she'll have 10 missed calls, checking on us. She's so worried what we're doing.
All right, here's me releasing Lester back after a week, after he was entangled and he was safe to go back with his lead levels were low and he's going back home.
Guess what, Lester? We're home. Here we go. Look.
And they can literally smell that water when they get within 50 feet or so. They know what's going on.
There's that wing flap where they always do.
Nothing better than giving a bird things.
This is Yodel. telling his mate I'm back. A week later, I went to double check on Lester just to make sure he was okay. He was doing good. He was seen with his mate and his juvenile chick, and he was wing flapping, and he was looking very encouraging that everything was gonna work out okay for Lester. Until we got the phone call on November 23rd. Lester started icing in on the lake.
That was all open water, David. So that just happened, occurred that night.
This lake was so thin, it's the thinnest ice that I have gone across. I think he was about 750.
No, when you rescued that dog in the.
Yeah, but for
We have DNR and sheriff's departments call us for ice rescue now too.
when I was walking up, normally what I do is I have my knee on the back of the boat and I kind of scoop myself out with one foot. So if I feel the ice giving in, I fall into the boat. This ice was cracking and making such eerie noises that it even scared me. So I actually went and stood in the boat and I took a push pole and pushed my way to Lester. So I was pretty worn out by the time I got to him, but I was not going to give up on. I wasn't sure if it was Lester yet, but I kind of assumed it was. So here, listen to I don't know if you can hear this, but listen to the ice creaking, and that's creaking because I'm moving across it. I don't know, could you hear it? It was just like, it sounds like a submarine sound. That was the ice cracking, and I could actually see the ice doing this as I was going across it.
How'd you
So,
like to be me sitting on shore having, hanging on to that boat? We both wear full flotation suits. We don't take anything for granted. And actually now we own ice commander suits that you see the fire departments. We have sets of those too. So we've got it covered.
as you see, Lester was in a pretty small hole. And I mean, I didn't realize this, but I'm really out of breath, so you're gonna hear it when I video this.
He talks to them.
Well, actually, I was talking to him, it mustn't be working, but I was out of breath, but I said, I knew it was Lester, I saw his bands, and I said, look, Lester, I know you know who I am. Please, let me rescue right away. Don't evade me for an hour or two. And he let me scoop him up right away.
See, what they'll do is they'll go on inside that ice 2-3 feet and swim around the edge so you can't net them. Take a breath. Or they'll rock it out 200-300 feet under the ice, shoot back up, take a breath and go back out. Yeah, they're very smart birds.
So, you think, oh, it'd be easy to catch a loon in that tiny little hole. This one was, but like I said, that other video, you saw how it went up and that's where most of the loons are when we get to them. Okay, Lester was taken back to Raptor Education Group. He had gained weight from his first release. He had no broken bones. He had no fractures. We just figured all that monofilament line that he was struggling with for those days before we rescued him, his soft tissue was injured and he hopefully needed just more time. So Lester was taken down to the Gulf and given that extra time because
Nowhere else in the world would do that besides Reggie. And you keep hearing me say Reggie, but without them, we can't do this.
Karen on Seven Island Lake sent pictures and she says, oh, I feel so bad. She's all by herself. And I'm looking at the bands. I go, Karen, that's Lester. Lester came back. Lester came back on his own this spring and he's been on Seven Island Lake. I actually got a picture of him on a neighboring lake too, because loons do fly from one lake to the other when they're here in the summer. So Lester made it. He was rescued twice and he made back on his own.
How did you get into the Gulf of Mexico?
It's a secret.
We know how.
We have connections that I cannot
Unless-
divulge,
We know who
but
did it.
it's
We don't just rescue loons. We rescue bald eagles, pelicans, owls. That's just a few of our rescues. Another thing we rescue is swans. That's
That's me kissing
actually
the swan.
Kevin's favorite. Kevin, and lots of these swans are not as mean as people think.
oh my God.
And majority of them sit in my lap on the way to Reggie.
Grabs them in a blanket. And then the swan will sit with its head out and it'll put its head on my arm when I'm driving and puts its head around. It's a problem.
Yep.
You notice the orange suit, I heard that. We went to the ice commander suits now, so much easier to get in and out. That swan I chased and I almost had a heart attack in the water, chasing him on the ice. And I literally tackled him and I laid on the ice for 5 minutes to catch my breath before I even got up.
He was just talking to him.
I talked to some.
Actually, this was many years ago, because our grandson who is in this picture is now 15 years old. But he helped us on one of our first rescues of a juvenile bald eagle that could not fly good, that was on an island. And we captured him, brought him to Reggie, and Kevin was able to release him a
I got to
couple,
release him down in where?
Sauk City.
Sauk City in front of maybe literally 1,000, 1,500 people. It was unbelievably like touching the hand of God when I got to release that bird back. It was unreal.
And we also rescue in Florida.
They find
mean-
us when we're in Florida. Literally.
You probably recognize that.
I do, yeah.
That's where we stay at a campground, but we mostly rescue pelicans, but we have rescued cormorants and what was the other thing? The black skimmer.
Oh, yeah. Normally I grab a bird's beak to hold on so they don't bite me, but don't do it to a black skimmer. Their bottom jaw is like a vice grip. So when that bird grabbed me and I had tears in my eyes instantly, and I could not let him go because he was hooked and we had to take care of him.
But if you look in the middle picture, that's them catching a pelican off the Skyway Fishing Bridge in Tampa.
And if you see the pelican, we always keep a finger between their beak like this, because that's how they breathe. Same with loons, they kind of breathe through their beak too. But if you hold their beak shut, they suffocate.
We right now want to thank the Reggie group that's here
For support.
for support. So I want you guys to
But we couldn't do this without everybody here calling us and letting us know. What's nice now is our Wisconsin DNR is even calling us. People will call them, you think the DNR right away, they will call us and let us know, hey, can you help us? And absolutely, we'll go out and see what we can do. So it's all because of the public's cooperation.
as we said, it takes a village to rescue these birds. And we are thankful when we get the calls, and a lot of people will help too in getting these birds, because some of these birds, maybe not as much the loons, but some of these other birds, we need a lot of people to help capture. If there's any questions,
Oh, loons do not mate for life, they mate to the lake, it's always one that comes up.
Could you estimate the age of the chicks in the picture?
this
Just
one,
roughly?
this one's a couple of days old, that's my picture.
Linda does loon research, she's made flow charts and picture charts of every day of a chick's life, she can right to the date.
Those are about 2 days old in that picture.
And this is an obvious question, but I don't know. Do they nest right on the shore of the lake?
They nest on the shoreline, you know, because loons can't walk on land. Normally the water's edge on islands. Some of them are, people build artificial nesting platforms. The one personally on our lake, what they'll do is they will go like in a boggy area and they'll actually go in the bottom and they'll start bringing up the muck and they keep heaping it up to make a big humus mound. And then they go and then they go nest on top of that. So there's different places that they do nest, but they're always near the water's edge.
What about predators when they're like? Oh my gosh.
Eagles are their major predator.
We catch
Um,
eagles, but eagles take a lot of loons out, a lot of loon chicks.
other land, I mean.
Raccoons, well, it depends.
Snapping turtles, otters.
Muskies. The eggs,
Yeah.
snapping
There's a lot
turtles,
of things that will attack a loon.
raccoons, otters. Then,
People in kayaks and canoes that don't think they do any damage will come right up to the nest, spook the loon off, and the eggs will flush. So
because lots of times the loon's eggs, they normally incubate with their feet. That's how they warm those eggs, and when you flush them off the nest, they're going, and so do the eggs with them.
it's important to stay away from them.
Same thing, boat wakes. Will wash, especially those wake boats. They go right over and they'll wash those eggs right out of the nest because they're so big. So like I said, besides the boat, so those are the things that will hurt a loon in trying to incubate.
Mostly eagles now is a big predator, and the eagles have recovered so well, there's so many. And we do catch eagles, so.
We always talk to the eagles and say, well,
You got something else.
yeah, I'm helping you, but don't go by the loons now.
There was a question online asking, what are some suggestions or ways people can help, donations, or do you have a wish list of things?
Well, we are a nonprofit, so we do take donations just to help us with our gas. That's all we do it with. We do have a Loon Rescue Facebook, and it does list we have PayPal, Venmo, or our personal address.
And Reggie can always use the support because they have the biggest costs. Like I said, I would guess that rehab an average loon with lead poisoning, you're talking a few $1,000s between the fish and installation medicine. So there's costs involved. So when people tell me lead is cheaper, it really isn't in the long run if you look at the big picture.
I just have a question about Marge Gibson's training. Was she in a medical career at all and before she got, I thought so. I thought her.
She was in charge of the eagle recovery at the Exxon Valdez oil spill. She helped with the condor recovery in California. This lady, when her dad was hunting, she was 3 or 4 years old. He brought back dead ducks. He shot them. She tried to revive them. It's her life. It's who she is. And she's absolutely genuine. I mean, she eats, breathes, sleeps, birds. And not just any kind of bird. It doesn't matter. And she passes that on to everybody that she's in contact with. So.
Curious about the banding. Are you banding the loons or?
Well, the researcher had, Walter Piper, who I work with, he has the license to ban.
It's a federal permit.
Yeah,
So normally they have 4 bands. They have 3 colored bands and 1 silver with the USGS silver number on it. So when they capture loons, the only way you can capture a healthy loon is if they have chicks, and because they don't tend to dive as much, they try to stay up above the water. Also night capture, going up doing vocal calls, where if he was trying to catch the adult, he does the chick in distress call. So the adult thinks, oh my gosh, my chick, I gotta go. And then he scoops it up and bans them. Or when he does the chick, then he does the call like the parents are calling to get the chick to come. Or sometimes he goes silent depending on, the situation.
And with loons, it's all about passing on their genes. They will do whatever it is to make sure that chick survives, even if it means they die, to get that chick to survive so their genes get passed on for the next generation.
But every loon that's banded has its own unique color combination. No loon is the same one. So that way we know who it is by looking at their legs, or when they're preening, when they have their legs up in the air. That's how we ID loons, so we know who they are. Lots of times I'll go out in the spring and ID the returning loons from the winter.
I'm a loon widow. From when the ice is out of the lake until after we head to Florida in December, it's loons. It's loons all the time.
But when because I'll go to quite a few lakes, and when I'm going to them, it's almost like a puzzle. These loons know it's their territory and they all kind of just go back to where they belong, unless they don't make the winter.
How many different kinds of sounds do loons make?
Loons make 4 for sure sounds. I can do it real quick. I mean, there's other sounds they do too, but these are the main ones. This is the hoot. That's, they basically talk to each other, or they talk, or their chicks, they call their chicks and they'll hoot.
It's non-threatening.
It's a non-threatening. The whale is the one that we all know, most likely. That's a kind of like, where are you? If you listen to the whale, it's kind of like when there's a pair on the lake and they're trying to find each other, they'll wail, and then one will return the call. It's like, where are you? Come here. And when one sit, because both loons sit on the nest, so when they're switching incubation, sometimes the female or the male doesn't want to come back right away, and then one keeps wailing and wailing, like, come on, it's your turn now, not mine.
Both excellent parents. I mean, the male, I think, has an edge over the female a little bit.
Actually, the male is with the chicks more than the females lots of times that I've noticed. Tremolo is a call where the loon says, it's a warning call. It's given by both the male and female. It's kind of like, get away, you're too close to my family, back off. It's kind of like a laughing sound.
Did you notice this call she's using? They had to take that off the market. People were buying these, using it on the lakes and getting the loons upset. But we happened to find somebody that had a whole truckload of them, and we bought 5 cases. But they come in real handy when you're trying to locate a loon at night.
A yodel is only done by the male. It's a territorial. Each male has their own unique sound that they have learned over the years by the study, but this is the yodel. Only the male does that call. Show you how strong those bills are on a loon. One researcher was doing these calls because he was recording to know that there was a difference in the males' different tones. And one of the males were not happy with him, and he was in a Kevlar canoe doing these sounds. The loon came underneath the canoe and put a hole right in his canoe. That's how strong those bills are. Loons will actually attack each other because they're so
If
territorial.
you notice, when you see loons on the water, they're always looking under the water because that's where the danger is. Because the other loon will come up and stab them.
There has been loons found dead with repeated stabs. Actually, there was one loon that was not a happy camper when the eagle was going after its chick. And actually, when he was coming down for the chick, the adult parent came and they stabbed the eagle right in the heart. So, yeah.
So they're not an easy bird to handle.
So is that like
Yeah.
life size? Is that about the right size?
A little big, this one's
That's
a little big.
That's a goose decoy.
I'm a goose that identifies as a loon.
There was a comment online saying that lead weights are illegal in New Hampshire, and they indicated it has really helped a lot in that state. There was another lady that asked, she's interested in the Maiden Lake loon release.
The Maiden Lake loon is doing well. Reggie would know more about that. They're talking about should be released soon. But that was something that they would have to contact Reggie because they're the one who does the rehab on it.
We have no say in any of the rehab. We just bring them there and let them work their magic. But if they need help with releases or anything like that, we're always there. And we are volunteers. We don't work for Reggie. We have no affiliation except that we volunteer.
And we bring all the birds to them.
Yes.
How do you volunteer to be a transporter again?
Just give Reggie a call, and they're always looking for people, and just because they call you doesn't mean you have to do it. But if you're available, they would love to just, oh, Sam.
Sam,
I may happen to have volunteer transporter applications on that table right back there. If anyone's interested, you can help yourself.
It doesn't mean you have to do it, but if you're at least on the list, they can call you and you can say, well, yeah. And then you get to go see Reggie and you get to see the magic that they do. Yes.
Yeah, I be one.
You went to volunteer.
Walter is a volunteer transporter.
the,
You gotta
Reggie,
admit, it's rewarding, isn't it?
Yes.
Reggie has a bunch of brochures, in the back if you're interested, other, things to go, helping them for donations and everything. I have information on loons and getting the lead out, and there's also a poster that if you want to grab too on your way out from Loon Watch.
Walter?
Can I ask another question? The combination on the banding of the legs, is there a registry of those somewhere where?
Yes.
public can-
Well, Walter Piper has that registry data, and normally I don't even have it. I mean, I know certain loons, but like if we rescue a loon that's banded, I have to ask him.
But there's a national registry.
There is a national banding registry too. So you can get it that way too, but I get my information quicker through Walter.
There's a history there's a history of.
There's a history of each, like for a chick, a chick will always have the silver band on the left leg. And if the adult was captured that had chicks that didn't have bands, when they banded as an adult, they put the silver on the right. But the color combination, he has like 20 some different colors, and every combination is different, and he's real stringent on making sure only one loon gets banded that color.
What's the mesh size spacing on the gill nets you use?
1.5 inch, 2.5 inch stretch.
You catch fish in there at all?
Yeah, we've caught a few bass and some northerns and stuff, and turtles.
Wow.
But you know what, they don't die, because when the gill net is stretched out, as soon as we feel that net bounce, we're pulling it in, because we can't let the loon drown. And then we get the loon out, and then the fish and the turtles and everything come out secondary.
But that was only where we had the most fish and turtles. There was this Pipkey Pond in Presque Isle that the dam broke, and all the water was going out of the lake. There was hardly any water left, and there was the pair with 2 chicks, and we had to gill net them out, the chicks, because the parents flew out and put them in a different lake next to it. And we actually had a bunch of people helping, including my son, and he was going, my husband goes, "What's taking you so long? Start moving that." I can't, that because all the fish were condensed from the no water. There was so many fish that you couldn't even walk with that gill net to get those chicks.
See, we used to borrow nets from DNR, but we had to clean them so good. And and when they wanted them back the next day. So now at least we own our own gill nets, so we can take 2-3 days to clean them, rather than have to get them back the next day.
Yeah, because we get a lot of weeds and everything else on those gill nets.
We're looking, if you got any ideas how to catch loons, let us know.
Because there are a few that we can't catch. No matter how hard
The
we
cast
try.
net is really wonderful.
Thank you so
Very
much
good.
for being. Thanks
You
for all you
have
do.
lots of amazing,
Yeah.
comments online too, that I definitely want you to see. Yeah, here's.
Next month in October, our program is on moths. So maybe you've never seen a program on moths. And